us, but not only us. We've done all that and many other things, but we are also aware of the fact that there's more to be done. So we're preparing. We paved the way to Tehran, and our pilots over the skies of Tehran will deal blows to the Ayatollah regime that they cannot even imagine. And I can tell you this, we have indications that senior leaders in Iran are already packing their bags. They sense what's coming.
Well, what you're seeing there are not fireworks. These are missiles being intercepted in the skies in Israel. And that's what's happening because of this Israel-Iran war. And this is the latest conflict that the world has to deal with. And over time, we here in Ghana, because of the nature of our economy, we're exposed to what happens externally. I mean, we're here in this country. I mean, you'll be asking yourself why we should be worried and concerned about what's happening out there if Israel and Iran go to war. And that's the fundamental reason for the conversation that we're having this morning. It's a very important conversation because what is happening out there in Israel and Iran, if it continues and escalates, would have a direct impact on our economy and how things are playing out. We saw what happened when Russia and Ukraine went to war. If that memory is still fresh in your mind, there's no reason why we should turn a blind eye to what is happening in Israel and Iran. And that's why we're having this conversation this morning. Welcome to the TV3, 3FM 92.7 conversation. It's a special conversation on the impact of the Israel-Iran war on the economy of Ghana. And there's various sectors of the economy that this war could impact. And that's the fundamental conversation we're having today. And we're going to lay the basis and the context for this conversation so that you will follow us every step of the way. My name is Alfred Okanse. What you're seeing there, as a country, we import over $400 million of oil, that's processed or refined or crude oil to power thermal plants every month, over $400 million. Let that sink in. You'll ask yourself that, well, we are blessed with crude oil, so why are we importing? There are a number of reasons why. My guests will get into that. We have a refinery, the Tamari refinery, which is not working. And as a result, even though we are net exporters of crude, we are importing more than what we even get from the crude oil that we're blessed with as a country, over $400 million a month. Think about it. And as a result of this war that we're seeing play out in Israel and Iran, we're seeing that also impact on the Brent crude oil prices on the world market. And this is the trend. And we're going to put it on the screen right now. This is the trend from January 2025 up until now. We started the year with a little over $85 per barrel. And that trended downwards because of increased production from these oil production and exporting countries, that's the OPEC states. And with the stability on the global front, we didn't experience any turbulence. So we saw crude oil prices go very, very low on the world market sometime in April, trending down to almost $60. In fact, $60 a barrel sometime in May. And that is what we saw, the impact at the pumps in this country. Prices of petrol, diesel went down, went low, and it's been reducing over time. And this is one of the reasons why. Because we saw crude oil prices in May go as low as $60, some cases $58 per barrel. And the reason is there are three components that influences crude oil, that's the pricing of petroleum products at the pumps in this country. When you go to the fuel station to buy petrol, diesel, this price of crude oil on the world market influences that. The taxes and levies that government and also the various marketing companies have imposed, and the BDCs as well have imposed on the pricing we see also in the tax buildup. This is it. And then also, you recall, government was, well, there's a law that has been assented to by the president to have an additional 1 cedi for us all to pay so that the energy sector debt will be offset. We're told that over $3 billion you're having to deal with. And think about it. The reason why this is important as well, to pay attention to what's happening in Israel and Iran, is that this year, all things being equal, we'll need over $1.2 billion to power the energy, that's the thermal plants. Because our energy mix as a country, over 70% of our energy mix when it comes to production of or distribution of electricity is thermal. So we need fuel. Government needs money, over $1.2 billion to buy fuel to power the thermal plants. So if what is happening in Iran and Israel is anything to go by, we're looking at it impacting on petrol prices at the pumps, and then also it could influence prices or tariffs of electricity if things continue this way. And that's why the concern, we're paying some attention to how things are playing out right now. Just about 3 weeks ago, a barrel of crude oil was selling at just about $67. Now we're seeing it go up to about $76.48, $76.48. That is how the picture really looks like right now. And clearly a big concern to the global economy. But then again, we're narrowing down the conversation to how this is going to impact on us as a country, where it's going to impact on us, and what should be the response mechanism, the mitigation measures, and the policies that should be put in place to ensure that we're able to live with this conflict for as long as it goes on. Because guess what? This is an external situation. We don't have control over how long this conflict will take. And if you are also thinking about anything at all, let's put this on the screen. Let this get into your mind. This is how much we're spending every month to buy crude outside of Ghana, over $400 million. And this cost could go up if the price of crude oil on the world market continues to trend upwards. And bear in mind, what you're saying right now is the reality of the Israel-Iran war as we speak. Is a former member of parliament for the Kumbungo constituency and someone who understands the workings of the Middle East when it comes to the geopolitics, and then also how things play out, especially in Israel and Iran. And he was in Iran not too long ago, but he is here with us in Ghana. Honorable Rasul Mubarak, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Alfred.
It's good to see you too. Been a while.
It's been quite a while indeed. Beautiful shoes you've got. And I hope I wish the viewers could see that.
No, that's out of sight.
Is that the wind of change?
No, not at all. It's been like this for a while.
That's on the lighter side.
It's good to see you.
Yes,
also
indeed.
Joining us in the studio is Duncan Amoah. Duncan Amoah is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC. We are all consumers of petroleum in many ways, and he's the Executive Secretary of COPEC. Duncan, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alfred. Good to see you
It's
again.
good to see you too. Also be joining us on Zoom, we'll have Professor Peter Korte, is the Director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, at the University of Ghana, Legon. We would also have Dr. Theo Echampong, who is an economist and a political risk analyst as well, joining us on Zoom. And then we'll have Adib Sani, a security analyst, going to be joining us. And Emmanuel Bombande is a former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Ghana. They will all be joining this all-important conversation about this Israel-Iran war and the possible impact that it would have on Ghana if it escalates. And I'll start off with you, Mr. Mubarak, for good reason, because you were in Iran not too long ago. And how this war is playing out. Did you see this coming? I mean, the few weeks ago that you were there.
Well, I mean, good morning to viewers. This was a surprise attack on Iran. This is an illegal war because it does not conform to any of the charters of the United Nations. So that has to be put in proper perspective. Iran as a country has not attacked any other country in the last 300 years, Alfred. We're talking about 3 centuries. Any attack on Iran over the last 300 years have been countries attacking Iran. But Iran has never decided that, we've had a bad night and we're going to go bomb another country. So you have a situation where somebody sits in Israel and they feel they could be arrested because of the war crimes they had committed. And so they need to start a war with Iran.
But there are also always underlying currents.
Which is most unfortunate. The underlying currents are that Israel, a country that has at least 70 to 250 nuclear bombs, together with the United Nations and Europe, decide that Iran cannot have, nuclear bombs, for which reason, negotiations had started. They were just about doing the 6th round of talks, when Netanyahu decided that, look, the way things are going, I need to scuttle, the negotiation process. And
is that right?
That is what it is. Otherwise, if Iran was at the table, and I'm sure you might have seen this in the news, with the United States of America, just last week or so, they were to meet for the 6th round of talks, and then you decide to spring a surprise attack on Iran. The UN has rules of engagement. To start a war with another country, you need to conform to Article 33 and 34 of the UN Charter, which enjoins every country, to use peaceful means, to resolve issues affecting them. And if that were not to happen, they could also invoke Article 51 of the Charter, which is to go to the Security Council. All of these things had not been done by Israel. And you must understand, where the Zionist administration is coming from. From 1991 at least, every now and then you hear Netanyahu say that Iran is this close. Iran is on the brink of developing a nuclear bomb. And I think the world should thank, the Ayatollah, because he's made, there's a pact in Iran that they will not develop nuclear bombs. What they are seeking to pursue is nuclear for energy, which every country has a right to do. I mean, in the 50s under President Nkrumah, Ghana Atomic Energy, that was the purpose, for energy purposes. So it's quite unfortunate that this had happened. I think it is a catastrophic mistake because Iran had known always that at some point or another, somebody may want to attack them. So they've been prepared for this all these years. And you've clearly seen the power with which they've been able to infiltrate into, the Israeli airspace. I'll give you a typical example. For you to fire a missile from Iran into Israel, that's about 2,000 kilometers range. You need to cross over Iraq, you need to cross over Jordan, you need to cross over Palestine before the missiles get into Israel. And even if it did get into Israel, the Israelis have a missile interceptor called the Iron Dome, which clearly now has become a paper dome because the Iranians are striking deep in the south, in Tel Aviv. You've seen what they had, turned Haifa into. I mean, nobody wanted war because clearly wars do not solve any problems, but every country also has a right and a duty to protect its citizens. The first duty of every government, is the protection of its citizens. And so if you are in your country peacefully and somebody decides to wage a war on you, you have every right, to respond. And that is exactly what the Iranians are doing, to respond to an illegal war on them. And the sadness is that we are in Ghana, others are in other parts of Africa, some are in Europe and North America, and it's going to have, catastrophic effects on ordinary people of the world who are just minding their business. I mean, what is it that one country decides they have to make war with all of its neighbors? Syria, they bombed it, they bombed Lebanon, they bombed Iraq. Look at what has happened in Palestine.
But because Israel is not also represented around this table.
Yes.
What I want to do is not to go so much into the narrative of Iran.
It's not. It's just bare facts.
I mean, I'm sure that. Then again,
Yeah.
If Israel was seated around the table, they would defend their position and have a reason why they did what it did.
Alfred, in our kind of job,
or why the war is
our
going
kind
on.
of job, in our kind of job, facts are sacred.
Absolutely.
What does the UN say about going to war with another country? You have to exhaust the processes. Has Israel gone to the Security Council? No. Have they exhausted all processes before, springing this attack on Iran? No. And you might have heard the United Nations General, Security, UN.
Security Council.
No, the UN boss.
Secretary General.
The Secretary General. That clearly this is in violation of international law. And everybody, you can speak to all the experts in the world, and they will tell you this is clearly in violation of international law. And this is not the first time they're doing something like that. Now, this is a country that bombs hospitals, 36 hospitals bombed in Gaza, no implications. I mean, it's a sheer hypocrisy of the world to pamper and shield a country that has completely gone gangster. And that is what we're experiencing right now.
But I tell you what, so as we are monitoring the geopolitics and how things are playing out, I indicated to you that the trigger points cannot also be underestimated. So that it would be out of place to say Israel was just there and then they decided to start firing missiles. And that's what I wanted to put this conversation in that particular context. But moving on, onto Duncan, because we are still living the experience of the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, we were not at war. We were in this country minding our business. And then we had to deal with the soaring fuel prices as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, spike in the food prices, shortage of fertilizer, and then the attendant impact that it had on the economy. We had to default on our debt, go on a DDEP, went to the IMF for support, and the replica effect, as we saw, with what is happening now. I mean, clearly, we would not be immune to the impact if it escalates, is it not?
Alfred, we've never been immune to anything, but if you look at Ghana's history or the records from the founding father, he had seen all of this at play, and for which reason he conceived birthing a refinery for Ghana, because at some point you need to localize your economic advantage. Yes. And unfortunately, our leaders or successive leaders have not built on that. So we are still exposed to whatever the geopolitical tensions, pressures, or the economic underpinnings are as far as these tensions are concerned. Let me remind you that the Middle East is so critical as far as the international oil space is concerned. Extremely critical. In fact, of every 5 barrels in the world, one would need to go through necessarily the Straits of Hormuz, which is not too far from Iran. It's just behind them. And so when you destabilize them, and mind you, as of 2025, Iran is the 5th largest globally, accounting for 4.4 million barrels daily.
Of crude?
Yes, of crude daily. And so if you put Saudi and Iran together, the world basket, the production basket, is down by 15%. If you add Iraq and Kuwait, you are coming to 22% of the world's oil. Alfred, the oil space is such that even if you knock off 5%, the pressures you would have will drive prices easily to 100. And this is why. You have demand, sustained. And once demand is sustained, it means that India, China, just these two countries are doing about 30% of global consumption. Just these two. They have not slowed down their production. They have not slowed down on their economies, right? So their demand, the demand curve is a constant one. And then you would have the supply curve. Probably increasing is rather declining. So when it dips by even 5 million barrels of the 101 million you need daily, what it will now mean is that there will be more resources, chasing the fewer barrels on the market. Yeah. And that is why it spikes and it declines. But when it is spiking because of these geopolitical factors, it can move from 60 to 100 within a week. Because if the world senses that clearly there's going to be pressure and the EIA, which is the Energy Institute Administration of America, would decide to stock up because they anticipate that, the factors of supply would be inhibited at some point, they will buy everything. They have the money. The rest of the world is now left chasing the little that is left. Mind you, Alfred, within this same space, you have Europe now insisting they are going to move away from Russian oil. In fact, they've moved away from oil, though they go back to China and India to re-import what Russia sends to them. True. They've moved away now. They are saying the gas, they are also going to move away from gas by 2027. So we are moving from Russia, which is the world's second largest, right? And then the tensions within the Middle East, Iran, Israel, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, and others waiting, would also knock off some 25%. If you add the Russian cargo, that is also, facing the difficulties with exporting and all of that. Alfred, you are doing about 36% of the world's cargo in distress currently. And so I wasn't surprised when within a matter of 3 days, we had gone down to about 58 just about a month ago. And then it moved upwards to around 70, 80. Within 2-3 days, we had done about $12 a barrel. Mind you, the net effect on a cost per barrel is that the finished product that the cost per barrel would impact will take 5 days normally. And so anytime crude prices go up, then plat prices would also follow. But it doesn't follow the same day. It will take you a time lag of 5 to 7 days. Then it also goes up because that's a base product. As we speak, Bost that should have kept products for you and I, right? When prices were a bit favorable, didn't do so. They didn't have the money. They didn't have the program to do so. So you don't have anything to fall on from Bost. Your refinery that could also have stored some crude or probably been buying crude at this point or buy crude or store some crude earlier is also not being helped. And so your refinery is down. Your two critical...
When was the last time Tamari refined any crude?
You are dealing with about 36 to almost 40 months now. Nothing has been done. The last parcel had to do with one of the oil traders that decided it wanted to use the facility for tolling somewhere 2021, thereabouts. Since then, nothing. A new government comes into power. You have people that have been put there, and thankfully they understand the refining business and the space. As to whether government has committed to give them the resources or the incentives they need to be able to get a place up and running, you don't get that sense. Central Oil Refinery, the Chinese refinery that came up somewhere 2023.
What's their status now? Are they still in business?
The last time I checked, they were struggling just to get crude. And so it tells you where our priorities lie. Alfred, the tensions Israel-Russia could have a crippling effect on the Ghanaian economy. And I say so advisedly.
A crippling effect?
Yeah, a very crippling effect. It could be dire. It could be way dire than we probably anticipate.
Than Russia-Ukraine?
You see, the amount of fuel that comes from the Russia-Ukraine enclave is not in any way comparable to the amount of fuel you are getting from the Straits of Hormuz alone. You are dealing with Kuwait, which is number 6. Iran is number 5. Saudi is number 3 or 2, right? So of your top 10, 4-5 countries are within that enclave.
You mean the top 10 of the OPEC countries?
Yes, oil producing and exporting countries. Of the top 10, 5 of them are within that region. And the volumes that they contribute to global supply daily is not a joke. Mind you, 25% of global cargo will go through the Straits of Hormuz. The Straits of Hormuz is not any farther than Iran, and the bombs are flying, right? I would say that if they do not stop within the next 48 hours, right, I will not be surprised international market price for crude would hit $90. And you know why?
Why?
It started from, well, maybe Iran cannot keep up. That was the thinking. And the thinking again was that the wildest card for international oil space, which is the American president, was going to be able to bully Iran into some submission, right? Now, once Iran holds sway and insists that they are not going to be bullied this time, and they will continue to also fight back, Alfred, what it will now mean is that the Strait of Hormuz can no longer guarantee any cargo, any passage. And Alfred, I have indicated already that 5% is significant. Yet you are dealing with 22-25% of international cargo going through the Straits of Hormuz.
That's troubling. It's a very
extremely
troubling picture that that you paint.
Extremely.
And we narrow it down to the Ghanaian situation, because if you look at the 2025 budget, even the average crude oil price projection in the budget is just a little over $74 per barrel. That's what we projected. If it should go high, it should go that much to 74. You are saying in the next 48 hours, if things continue this way, we could hit $90 a barrel.
Yes.
I put Bloomberg, the Bloomberg terminal on the screen not too long ago. Bloomberg is quoting about $74 as of this morning, right? And this increase from just about $65 3 weeks ago now to $74 within just a space of under 2 weeks, as a matter of fact. And you're saying that if things continue this way, we could hit 90. That's about additional $15 more in 48 hours.
You see,
is that not extreme?
As of Friday, when the American, government seemed to have come in, talking big, in a way to say that Iran should stand down. The thinking was that the war was going to end anytime soon. And so it came down. It cooled a bit.
Yeah.
We had gone up to almost 80, and then it cooled a bit. By Monday evening, it had picked up again. And as I speak with you, international market price for plat, that is the finished product, right? What used to be around 651, as of today, are quoting around 715.
Wow.
So you may not get away from the effects of the missile exchanges that is going on. And I have indicated this. You hear Saudi is getting interested. You hear the other countries are getting, Russia is getting interested. You hear the other major blocs, China is getting interested. As of this morning, a news item I'm getting indicates that China is now launching a radar detector. So the stealth, bombers that initially we thought, could not be detected. China is releasing ammo that can now detect the stealth, bombers. Alfred, if they do not put a stop to the conflict immediately, and these global powers, Russia will be interested, naturally, because this is also not just about Iran, Israel, it is also about the shift in the new world order, okay, an economic order. Don't forget, BRICS has been, in the shadows, lurking for far too long, hoping that the power, that the global hegemony, the unipolar thing, would now shift to a bipolar or multipolar, and other countries can have their currencies, they can have everything to do with their economies without necessarily going through the American dollar. So, Alfred, it's got a lot to do with economics at this point than it initially did when it was just Israel and Iran, and it was about nuclear disarmament or enrichment and all of those things. Now, it is shifting to an economic war. And once it becomes an economic war, expect the BRICS bloc led by Russia and the others, to be more interested.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and
South
then
Africa, plus, and the other countries.
I mean, Nigeria signed on not too long ago.
Exactly. Mind you, the other countries within the Gulf, okay, are watching. And one of the fallouts, when Israel was even fighting Gaza, you know what happened to people who had to probably leave Ghana towards, say, Dubai or UAE? Flights that ordinarily would have taken you about 6 hours, 20 minutes, you would now have to reroute to do about 8 hours because of safety concerns. And so the international aviation space is simply going to be hampered. The uncertainty about things happening within the next hour, the next 2 hours, the next 3 hours, has a tolling on economists. Because you cannot even determine, what you are going to do next, within the next, 24 hours. You don't know whether Iran is stepping up, or as of this morning from the news reports again, Israel has decided, to use aerial bombardments. Alfred, it looks as though this is going to continue, and it looks as though it is going to move from just the bombs now to an economic war.
And that's where the concern is, because when we get into an economic war, clearly Ghana cannot be spared the impact.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to get into, drill down the conversation to how this is going to impact on Ghana going forward. And in fact, you're right, because I'm just checking the oil market updates right now, and Brent crude rose more than 7% on Friday, more than 7% on just this Friday gone by. And in fact, that was the largest one-day gain since the Russia invasion of Ukraine in 2022. So there's a trend that in a day
it could do 7.
It could rise 7%. Crude oil price on the world market. Then, if all things being equal, you certainly will be right with that projection of $90. And if
we
this
could even
goes
hit
on,
100.
that'll be scary. But here's why I bring in Dr. Thuy Champong. He is a political risk analyst. He's joining us on Zoom. Dr. Champong, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. It's a gloomy picture, but that's the reality, is it not? And you're observing how things are playing out in Israel and Iran. And I've just been referencing what happened as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war and the impact it had on this economy. We're barely coming out of it. Then we're having to deal with another war that we're sitting in our country and having nothing to do with it. But then again, because we are so exposed, we're having to deal with the impact of it as well. How does all of this play out for you?
Thank you once again. You're very right. So in the last few years, I actually started with the pandemic, and then Russia, Ukraine, and the major impact that had on global food and fuel prices. And I think the parallels now with the Iran-Israel conflict is really the potential inflationary impact of that, especially if oil prices go up further through the roof. So recall that during the war, the Russia-Ukraine, at one point, oil prices went up to about $147 or so per barrel, before eventually coming down as the war went on. And the concern now at the moment is that, are we likely to see similar sentiments being expressed or being borne out in the oil market? And for a country like Ghana, that it actually is net oil importing, could have some major impact on inflation and some of the other sort of fiscal targets that the government has.
Right. And the fiscal targets you talk about is where I want to dwell on, because yet we are blessed with crude oil. We're exporting crude. Government gets revenue from exporting crude. So in effect, this price of crude oil going up on the world market has some benefits in terms of the revenue government will get from selling our crude. But then again, if you juxtapose that with how much we are spending to import crude and finished products like petrol, diesel into Ghana, there is a real concern there, is it not? And if this conflict escalates, Duncan is talking about $90 a barrel in the next 48 hours, all things being equal. I mean, how are things looking like from your own crystal ball and how things are playing out right now?
It really depends on the direction of the escalation, right? If things further escalate and actually becomes really bad, and let's say we see oil prices crossing the $90-100 a barrel mark, for sure it's going to impact petrol prices at the pump. So Ghanaians are going to have to pay more for petrol, regardless of the fact that the exchange rate, the cedi, has stabilized. The point also is that, of course, we also produce some oil and export some oil, but the net effect is that we spend more importing oil than we do getting from our own entitlement of oil. So that is really, I suppose, the biggest concern. But we do also have some levers kind of domestically. So I think the 1 cedi a litre charge that the minister wanted to introduce, that has been shelved for now. We have also the price stabilization and recovery levy. I don't know the amount in it at the moment, but that should also allow us to at least cushion payments at the pump for a couple of weeks. With the budget itself, the numbers or the projections are based on certain fiscal receipts coming in. And if those things don't live up to the full projections, then I would expect maybe the minister may make some further adjustment to the budget numbers next month. So next month, the mid-year budget is expected to be read. And I think by that time, we would have been in a better position to actually know sort of how the early scale impact of the conflict is having on Ghana's fiscal finances. So far, it looks as though the markets have baked in the possibility of some form of resolution of the Iran-Israel conflict. And so you're not seeing oil prices spiking through the roof sharply as we saw during, other episodes. But yeah, we don't know what will happen tomorrow.
Certainly so. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All what is happening is outside of our control, really. But you referenced the decision by government to shelve the implementation of the 1 cedi energy sector debt recovery levy. And that was hinged on the positives we were seeing with the currency doing well against the dollar, and then also the crude oil price on the world market trending downwards at the time. A good decision, you would say, of government not to implement this de-levy also, it was captioned?
That is the right call. It's the right decision to have made at the time, especially when during the implementation, the prices were just about going up because of the Iran or Israel-Iran conflict. It's the right call to have made. And it also does, for me, indicate the proactiveness with which the new administration is engaging on issues of economic, management. That, if things are not necessarily going per the timelines they had already indicated, they are prepared to listen and retrace steps back and then later see what they can do in relation to that particular policy.
Dr. Tuchampon, I appreciate your first thoughts on this. Stay with me. And Mr. Mubarak, the fact that we are not immune from what is happening globally is where the concern is. So that you heard Dr. Tuchampon talk about the areas, and Duncan referenced it. I mean, if crude oil price on the world market goes up, it influences prices of petroleum products at the pumps. Petrol, diesel, gas go up. That will trickle down to transport fares. And every sector of the economy is impacted when petrol prices go up. And then we're talking about tariffs, electricity tariffs now, because thermal plants are going to be powered by the crude oil that we need. I mean, concerning to say the least, is it not?
Well, it's very disturbing, if I would put it mildly. This is not the first time that we have experienced or would be experiencing global shocks. You would remember events in 2015, 2016, global prices of oil and cocoa plummeted. And as a result of that, it affected, Ghana's economy greatly. Interestingly, just about that same time, it was President Mahama who was president of our country. So no country is immune to, global shocks in view of the interconnectedness of, various countries. And that should also get us to, diversify a lot more, to fix the problem with Temoy Refinery. That should also get us to be able to, produce some more oil, in a way that we can absorb, some of these shocks. It would be most unfortunate. It would affect, the poor man in Kumbungu. It would affect the poor man in Accra or any part of the country. And I think global leaders would have to sit at the table as adults and look through these issues and crises and find an amicable, solution to the problem. The problem is there's one country that has decided not to adhere to international law.
I wanted us to.
No, I'm not deviating. Because you see,
I asked a specific question about how we are exposed as a country.
Yes.
And how this is going to impact on us.
Yes.
The reason why I indicated to you when you started the analysis in the first instance is that the conversation this morning is not so much about.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Who is right and who is wrong, and who started what.
Yeah.
The major concern is about how what is happening out there
affects all of us.
Impact on this country. That's the fundamental reason for our
Alfred,
conversation.
If that problem is not solved, and the situation escalates,
so it's
going to affect all of us.
The impact of the escalation that we're looking at right
what
now.
I'm saying,
you referenced your prices and others, and what happened previously. What should be the thinking?
As I've indicated, diversifying. Looking at creative ways of raising revenue. Clawing back on areas that need to be clawed back. I'll give you a typical example. There's so much road rage in the country, traffic violations, etc. This is one area that government can raise a lot of revenue from. Government has spoken about citizenship by investment. I mean, per my calculation, we could raise more than 10 billion, USD from that. So there's got to be creative ways of generating revenue so that even if prices were to shoot through the roof, government has enough shock absorbers, to be able to walk us through the crisis. It's not the first time that we're going through a problem like this. We experienced it in 2015. Gold prices, plummeted. Every now and then you see what you call it, oil prices going up. But as Iran has indicated, if the crisis continues, they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. 26% of global supplies come from that strait. If that were to happen, God forbid, it's going to affect us deeper than it already is. Currently, prices on the international market have gone up, I think, about 6 or 7%. All right? So let's find a solution to this. But within the country, we need to have creative ways of generating revenue to be able to meet some of the things that we have to meet. I mean, we've got to fix the challenges in education. We've got to fix the challenges in health, infrastructure, etc. All of these things cost money, all right? And if you have a global crisis on your hand and you don't have buffers in place, then clearly you are in a bit of trouble. And that is why very recently I even suggested that we should shut down 22 of our embassies, given how much it costs, over $100 million. And you can imagine what $100 million can do in other essential parts of the economy. If you had to put that money in health, in education, or infrastructure, the impact could be monumental for our country. So it's an unfortunate situation. I mean, nobody wanted to be here. Governments plan, they put their budgets together, projecting a certain price stabilization on the world market. And when these things do occur, clearly it throws your budget off gear. It's going to affect us, in diverse ways. Inflation may go up. The people who pick buses, trotro, taxis, the farmers, it's going to affect everybody. So there's a cascading effect of global events like this. And that is why at all times, the first principle would be to be on the path of peace. What can we do to safeguard everybody's best interest so that we don't find ourselves in a situation like this? And I'm particularly excited by, Article 34 of the UN Charter. Solve all problems by peaceful means.
By peaceful means.
So I don't see the difficulty in solving a problem, like this. But clearly, if one party is unwilling to sit at the table like an adult and have the problem resolved.
Well, so
then,
this is where I bring in Duncan there, because you mentioned buffers.
Yeah.
And Duncan, I referenced the Tamale Refinery earlier, and you give more detail as to what is happening with the refinery. Unfortunately, when it comes to buffers, you say that BOST is also, which has the primary objective of ensuring the buffers that we're talking about, so that when whatever is happening on the external and the global front, we don't have control over. We would have buffers to cushion the impact that this would have on our economy. You say BOST is still in that position to do that right now?
Alfred, we are exposed completely. And I say this advisedly. I have international market prices for crude as of this very minute, and it's not looking funny. The Nigerian Brass River, $79, Kwaibo, $79. WTI is around 76.35, Brent 77. So 80 is just, in the corner somewhere. If you do the Mumbai, Cossack, Cabinda from Angola, $79 already. You are not far from 80. So the impact could hit all of us. And then you come down to whether we are even prepared as a country with any buffers. The answer for me, per the checks we have done, is that we don't even have any. We've treated BOST in the past as though it were a private BDC whose focus clearly was simply making profits. And I don't know what made the past MDs believe that when they come to tell us they've made profits, then we should be clapping for them. The reason we set up BOST in '93 as a country is to keep a certain cushioning.
Sorry.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
For our people. And that cushioning was to prevent days like this when you have Israel, Iran, when you have Russia, Ukraine, when you have geopolitical tensions that force prices up drastically. If it was down to just the normal oil price movement where you do $2, $3, you can always stay safe within a certain net. But anytime there are geopolitical tensions and you do $10, $20 more on a barrel, the net effect is that it will drag prices of everything along. And so, BOST since 1993 had one mandate: bulk oil storage. The transportation bit is just to facilitate movement of cargo across the length and breadth of the country. But bulk oil storage. And yet, it has become more of, bulk profit-making, entity with the past management. I don't know what the current guys will come back to tell us maybe a year after, whether they are also there making profit or they are working to cool the effects of some of these geopolitical tensions. I don't get the sense that they have a liter as of today. And so, if it escalates,
BOST doesn't have a
single liter for you as a strategic stock.
Petrol, diesel.
And it's also not because they are
How's
not.
How's that possible?
Alfred, they don't.
Oh, come on.
As of, look, I cannot disclose.
I don't want to believe this.
I cannot disclose very personal conversations, but truth is that even to bring cargo now, they struggle because a certain Lacan arrangement that should allow them to bring a vessel on a certain date to discharge. They are struggling to get that. Again, you have a refinery that over 40 months has added not a liter to your refining bit. And so when you began with your introduction, the 400 million USD, there's every potential we can reduce that amount to 180 or even $220 million if we're just doing crude for our refineries to, as it were, process. Again, Alfred, I say this advisedly. What you call bitumen, right? The one you use in fixing your roads.
You mean quota?
Quota.
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of your crude. And yet, in Ivory Coast, their refineries are processing even bitumen that we go to import.
We import quota into the country.
Yes, we import. And so imagine for a country like ours, as of the last time I checked, globally we're 46. Okay?
46 when it comes to what?
Yeah, on the rankings of oil producers.
Right.
I think we have even, come down further to around 43, 42. Because the volumes we used to do have gone up a bit. Alfred, we do not have any plan for our crude. So you know what happens?
Tell me.
We produce the crude, Tallow and ENI and the others will produce everything. Then we'll export everything to Europe.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, you don't have a refinery that will refine
Alfred,
what is due.
in 63, your founding president gave you a refinery. He's given you a refinery. It has, and Tor, as I speak with you, has even more capacity in terms of tankage or storage than Bost does. So it is heavy, it is big, just that we've not seen the potential for growth. So we've done garbage in, garbage out over the years, not this government. And we've collapsed the refinery. A new one came, Cosento. Is also struggling. Whatever we choose to do with our refining space, I think we need a rethinking, because you cannot continue to hope that the West will continue to feed you oil every single day, every single month. A lot of what we consume now is coming from Europe.
True. And let me bring in Professor Daniel. I mean, this is a troubling reality, but we'll have to talk about it. The reason why we're talking about it this morning is to preempt the worst case scenario, so that some thinking, and I'm sure that already we have some sources within the finance ministry, they've been doing the permutations already in the worst case scenario, what happens and what measures could be put in place. And we need to let you, the Ghanaian, also get to know how things are going to play out, so that we're not taken by surprise in the case of the Russian-Ukraine war, where we're hit by the impact of that war, sitting here in Ghana, and then government also coming to tell us other areas that war hit us. What we're doing is get us all along the way, every step of the way, to understand why we should be concerned about what is happening between Israel and Iran, and the specific areas of the economy that this would impact. And Professor Daniel Draman Kipo is an international relations expert. He's joining us on Zoom right now. Prof, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to the listeners, viewers, and panelists.
Perfect. And I appreciate you joining us. Unfortunately, we are not. As a country, Ghana, we are not immune from the geopolitics and the impact of it. And with the bombs and missiles flying in the air in Israel and Iran, we're here and having to bear the brunt of it. Quite concerning, is it not?
Yeah, sure. I certainly very worried. I think every minute, every hour, I keep on watching, even from TV and also on live on Al Jazeera, BBC, and all this kind of thing. It's certainly very disturbing to see two powerful countries on each other's neck, on throwing bombs, as rightly said. Missiles on one side, bombs here and there. It's certainly worrying. And Ghana, as a country, we cannot see that it doesn't concern us, or we are not worried. We should be worried, because what happened there will affect everybody, especially in the sector of the energy sector. Iran is a very great supplier of oil, supplied to so many countries. Israel, likewise, the same energy aspect, gas, and the rest of them. So these are very countries that if the war persists, or if it takes more days, the effects will not be limited to Asia. The effect will not be limited to Middle East. Ghana, as a country, will certainly be affected. If you look at even the strategic geopolitics, the location, we don't pray that Iran will take action to block the Strait of Hormuz, where a lot of shipping lines, these are oils that move to Europe and some come in. And if that happens, then the consequences will be so high for us. And that is why I think that the UN Security Council, whatever they can do, they should be able to take this up, to be able to bring these two countries so that we find a way into it. I'm sure that America could be a key factor, but because of America being an ally of Israel, a co-sponsor of Israel, so sometimes America alone will not be enough, but Security Council, that is an area that I think that we should be able to see how Security Council can step in, at least come out so that we can find it. That notwithstanding, the role of African Union, EU are all very important global actors. I believe that all of them need to step up, tighten the diplomacy, which started but didn't go far, so that they can go back to their table. I'm sure proxy war between Israel and Iran has been going on, but not this direct confrontation. So I believe that diplomacy, all is not lost. It's still possible that the US on one side, EU, which is quite neutral to some extent, Russia can be a very key mediator in this conflict. And I believe that Iran has a lot of trust for Russia. They are partners, they are allies, they have a lot of military pact, they have a lot of defense agreement. And I'm sure that Russia coming in there will be able to attract some amount of interest. Iran will be interested seeing Russia playing a key role. Iran will be very interested seeing China being a key factor, and then America and Europe on the other side. So if we have these four actors coming in, I believe they should be able to talk to these two countries, lay down their bombs, stop the firing, and let's go back to the drawing line.
I see. But then again, it's interesting you mentioned Russia, because there's a conflict, yes, but there are interests at play. Duncan Amoah referenced the BRICS movement,
Yes.
with Russia being a key player in that entire BRICS. And even President John Dramani Mahama, during his inauguration speech, put up a thought for us all to think about as to whether we should also then begin to mold the idea of, and considering how the BRICS, that's the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and others, advantage could also impact on Ghana. What role would you expect Russia to play, taking into consideration the BRICS interests and then also the push for the new economic order, as we are seeing now?
Sure. With BRICS, certainly, I think the newcomers, Iran is one of those newcomers who are Ethiopia and the like, are the newcomers to join the five foundation states. So BRICS could have been a way to take this up. And I believe that BRICS, the foundation members, led by South Africa, could pass it through, work through Russia, and that would be a very good side that they'll be able to come in there. So BRICS, I don't know why it has even taken quite so long. We need BRICS as a very great factor that can come in to change the new world order. This kind of bipolar world where the whole international system is dominated by one factor like the United States of America. We need this. We are moving to a unipolar world, and BRICS will be the greatest actor that will be able to break that monopoly power. And I believe that this is an opportunity for BRICS, expecting Russia to step in there, expecting South Africa to come in there, and China as well. China, usually, they are more interested in the economic issues, but not so much on the military. Sometimes even if they do it, they want to do it behind the scene. But Russia, of course, can voice out. South Africa can easily add their voice to this conflict, and I believe that that could be the way out. As far as Iran is a member of BRICS, they are the newly admitted members, so that put it on a very strong footing that BRICS could take this up, and BRICS, I'm sure that BRICS will be able to work it out. So that should be a great opportunity that we should be hoping to see that great bloc will step in there.
And Prof, I do appreciate your thoughts on this, and I also welcome Mr. Emmanuel Bombande, who is a former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. He's joining us on Zoom as well for a conversation. But we've seen some updates from Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Ghana. We're going to slap that on the screen right now so that we get an update on what Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa put out there a couple of days ago. First off, he indicated that no Ghanaian fatalities have been recorded, and then or even injuries. President Mahama's administration is resolved to spare no effort in ensuring that Ghanaians caught up in this Israel-Iranian conflict are offered full protection and removed from danger, and says government will not fail a compatriot. I also say Ghana's embassy in Israel has identified 922 Ghanaians currently living in Israel. Included in that figure are 65 Ghanaian students studying in 6 Israeli universities. Also, channels for regular communication with the Ghanaian community in Israel have been established. The government of Ghana reiterates its demand on both parties to pursue diplomatic options and end the hostilities. And this is why I bring in Mr. Emmanuel Bombande, is a former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. Bombande, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Am I the one you are?
Yes, you're muted.
Okay.
You are muted. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
I mean, talking about this current situation of the Israel-Iran conflict, as we're seeing right now, and the impact that it's going to have on Ghana as a country. I mean, you understand how this geopolitics works. What should we be concerned about as a country with what is happening out there?
Well, first of all, let me share my greetings to you and your audience. We always forget to appreciate our geopolitical landscape from the bigger picture. So maybe my very first point before I forget is to join your panelists who is advocating for us to be part of the BRICS. If you were to ask me, our application should have already been there. We should have been queuing, because keep in mind that the processes take some time. And the reasoning is very simple. When you are passive in this world, there are consequences that you pay for, and that is the gist of your question. When you talk about the impact on Ghana, Ghana cannot constantly be disposed to receive the outcomes and consequences of international conflicts when our voices are not there to contribute to prevention. So before we talk about, and you have already talked a lot on the economic level about the impact on Ghana, the question should be turned around. Where are we proactively in contributing to global peace so that even if the impact is on us, we are also satisfied that we are contributing to that global peace? If you look at the African Union Agenda 2063, one of the aspirations is that Africa must be central to contributing to international peace and stability. As you can see, we are far away from that. And if you then zero it into our country, it's very simple. We have moved from a unipolar world, and we are currently in a multipolar world. But we are definitely at the level of multilateralism, not proactive enough to make our voices heard. And this introduction for me is connected to where we came from right at our independence. The vision with our first president of positive neutrality was in the context that if you do nothing, your developmental aspirations and goals, including the economic discussions that you have, would always be trampled upon or would always be a major obstacle to overcome, because the global conflicts take you away from your economic, political, and developmental vision. And that is then why Ghana, in adopting positive neutrality, which is often misunderstood, was proactive under Kwame Nkrumah. That's why he was in Vietnam, trying to be an intermediary in that Vietnam War, because he always understood that those types of large-scale conflicts prevented Ghana from its self-emancipation and its leadership in Africa for the unity of Africa and for the economic integration of Africa. And we are, the rest of it is history. He was overthrown and we have gradually weakened. And so the addition there is the capacity to stick to our principles and to ensure that those values that defined Ghana at the beginning continue to be present today. And that is why the argument about joining the BRICS is a very sound argument, and we should have been proactively there in advance. So that will be my first take. Now, my second, in response to you, is the impact on Ghana. And still at the level of the geopolitics, you would understand that our voices completely are negligible. And so the impact on Ghana at the level of the economic level is one thing. And I don't need to explain in detail that we are trying as much as possible to recover from an economic downturn that was increasing poverty at an accelerated rate in our country, to the extent that we've not been able to do the investments in projects such as major highways that have become stuck. And because we are in a rainy season, it has become almost impossible just to even travel from Accra to Kumasi because the roads have so much deteriorated. Now, with this background, if you have a prolonged, protracted war between Israel and Iran, the global economic, political environment would even make it worse for us to now turn around from the weakening of our economy to the recovery, despite the good signs that our ratings are being upgraded and the future looks bright. There will be a huge burden to now take on board that impact of an Iran-Israel war to try to immediately put in place the necessary investments to recover, such as our infrastructure. But if we were to see it limited to these two, it could still be manageable, as Dr. Teo analyzed, looking at some of the intervention, for example, budget readjustments, OPEC trying to ensure that they control prices, etc. What will now become impossible, in my view, to be able to deal with is if the conflict now becomes larger with the intervention directly of proxies. Because the moment one power decides to support, let's say, Israel, you should be assured that other powers would align with Iran. And so your earlier conversation about an economic war would be true, because any means to be able to win would be pervasive. And the consequence of that would be the most vulnerable people of this world, in which Ghana belongs. And that is why whatever we do, our voices, carrying the voices of ordinary citizens so that our governments, what you would call it, standing globally, can continue to echo that voice, is that the world at this time does not need another large-scale war. Now, I know that you are in the flow of the conversation, so let me wrap this up if there are other questions to follow. No. Our weakness is timidity. Sometimes we feel that when we speak, there are privileges that we lose. And so nobody wants to talk because you are afraid of those privileges. And I don't think that is what should define the character of Ghana. we should continue as the black star of Africa with the values and the principles that defined us to speak the truth on justice. And where do we see this? We see this in the global framework of the Charter of the United Nations. You see, the hope that was generated and that came into fruition for our humanity was the UN Charter that was brought into fruition in 1945. The reason all the things we are talking about are happening is because gradually we have seen the deterioration in the capacity of our international community to deal with crisis. Let me quickly reframe this. We are able to, as human beings, anticipate that the type of crisis we are talking about would happen. So I always argue that don't worry too much about the conflict and the war. We should be more worried about the capacity to respond to it. Because when the wars are coming, but your capacity is high to respond to it, then we can talk about global peace. But the wars are increasing, and our capacity to respond to them are deteriorating. So that is why it becomes a multiple complex dilemma. So as we speak, nobody is respecting the United Nations Charter. Nobody is allowed under that charter to attack nuclear facilities. It is happening in daylight, and there is no capacity to prevent those who are attacking such facilities. And we don't need to be told. We learned it from 1945 that nuclear war would be annihilating to our entire human race. But it is happening. Human rights are being violated. And so without dilating too much, Ghana must uplift its voice in the multilateral framework globally, contribute to the African Union to speak up so that we are not just at the periphery of this world, but we are integral to the global peace that we are all searching.
And I do appreciate your thoughts on this, quite straightforward and candid, you know, to say the least. Emmanuel Bombande, former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, appreciate you. Thank you for this. And I'll take your wrapping up words on this. And on the back of what Mr. Emmanuel Bombande talked about, that our position as a country, he says our weakness is our timidity, because we fear that when we speak, our position could be used against us on the global front when it comes to geopolitics. You agree? Well,
and it is clearly things like that that would result in the conflict exacerbating. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't see leadership at the global level. Because I don't see leadership at the global level, this conflict, very unfortunately, is going to linger on. It's going to affect lives up and down, you know, the world. You heard what Trump said, you know, this morning, even in the face of his experts, his national security advisors, telling him that Iran was not at the point of developing nuclear bombs. He still went ahead and said they were a week away from doing that. And if you have one of the key global leaders making loose statements like that, then clearly you are in for big trouble. Now, for me, as a Ghanaian, you know, who seeks the well-being of not just Ghanaians, but Africans, what all of the people of Africa would have to be doing would be to look at diverse ways of, you know, leveraging on AFTA, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area, take full advantage, trade more amongst ourselves, you know, diversify, you know, so that when conflicts like this do occur, it doesn't affect us as greatly as they're doing. As we speak, you haven't heard any strongly worded condemnation from any leader within Africa. I haven't heard it. At the global level, in Europe, you haven't had any strongly worded condemnation. You know, and so because of the lack or absence of leadership at the global level, we may have to brace ourselves for, you know, for trouble ahead.
Duncan, what should be the thinking going forward, the mitigation measures? Because you've painted a reality check for us, which cannot be denied if this conflict escalates.
Alfred, we're asking for one Ghana city to, as it were, prop up the power sector. Take some of that money, give it to Bost to hold.
The levy is yet to come into force, by the way.
If we ever decide to, take some of that money, give it to Bost to hold strategic stock. There is some money sitting somewhere, again, that could also be channeled to buying products to store. And I have said this, Alfred, if as of when international markets are favorable and a metric ton is $600 and you buy some to store, if you woke up tomorrow and Israel, Iran, or Russia, Ukraine, or any of the geopolitical factors have pushed it to 800, you would have no justification coming to your trotro driver here to say, pay for the 800, because you bought some at 600.
Yeah.
So if you decided even to release at 630 or 650, you would still make more economic meaning or sense to your people than waiting for 800 and selling for 800 to your people because you couldn't plan for them. So I am saying, find some money, whichever way, give it to Boss to hold strategic stock, what you will call the stock levy. Give it to them and hold them accountable for every liter that is procured so that it is not just stolen or abused. Again, find a part of the 1 cedi money and fix Tamayo Refinery. If we are doing $400 million monthly in importing finished products and TOR can augment with maybe 40-50% of what our net national need is, and we're able to fix TOR, what it will mean is that, Alfred, the dollar that we will need to bring in the finished product from Amsterdam and wherever, TOR could get some, some money.
Yeah.
And they will be able to keep their workforce working. They will be able to also keep your petroleum security tight and good. So let's put them as part of our strategic plan. Let's not leave these buffers to waste. Because if you do, Ghana would not have the voice at this point to tell Iran or Israel to stop. I mean, we are just a microcosm to them.
Right.
None of these two countries will treat Ghana any superior to say that when we tell them to stop, they will stop. But we are able to internalize our local factors, and that is what we are all calling for. And let's help them.
Let's help. And that's exactly the objective of this conversation, highlighting this most important aspect of how this Israel-Iran conflict could impact on Ghana. Duncan Amoah is Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC. Duncan, appreciate you coming. Thank you. Also, Ras Mubarak, appreciate you coming. He is a political analyst, former Member of Parliament for the Kumbungo constituency. We also have Professor Daniel Draman Kipo, an international relations expert, joining us, and also Emmanuel Bombande, former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Ghana. I am Alfred Okanse. The conversation continues, so keep watch here on our social media handles, TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and stay with us. News Central is up next. Have a good day.
Your podcast, you know them play my embarrassed. This is not a but the big pongo, baby pongaso. You dey see me no fit kill I need to know where you did. Oh yes, me all okay. Shabali you know the day. Oh, my nest are not eating.